Well, good morning. We're going to get started. And today we have our new neighbors and our new tenants, the Quakers, and they will be presenting on their efforts with the Rochester Interfaith Development Corporation, the RIDC. Sarah Fitz-Romig and Jeff Fitz and Dan Bell will be speaking today. The RIDC is a 501c3 group that they created 5 years ago. The mission is to develop essential housing in the northeast quadrant of Rochester with supportive services in place for their residents. They are awaiting an announcement sometime this spring about funding from New York State. If awarded, then 3 new buildings will be built, 2 residential buildings, and a substance abuse clinic. RIDC's efforts have support from the city of Rochester, and its development partner is DePaul. So Sarah and Jeff and Dan.
Good morning. It's so nice of you to welcome us and give us this opportunity to speak with you today. As you know, I grew up in this church. My father was David Romig, and it is really wonderful to be back here. And I can't say enough about how welcoming and helpful Dupsy has been in our transition. And we're just thrilled to have this as our new home. We downsized. And that's not always a thing to do. It's challenging at best. So I'd like to start today's presentation with a little recent history of the Quakers in Rochester, and afterwards we'll walk you through the presentation about Rochester Interfaith Development Corporation. But I think a little bit of historical context will help you understand our path to the mission of developing housing in Rochester. So before we were located at A4 Scioto Street, you may know we were at 41 Westminster Road in a large mansion. When we outgrew that space, the search was on for a new, larger building. And after several years of deliberation, we set our sight on 84 Scioto at the corner of Scioto and Charlotte. It was an industrial building that had been vacant for 5 years. So it was pretty grim inside, to say the least, with ceiling tiles hanging down and a lot of dust and dirt. It was a HVAC facility. But the community had a vision. It was an extraordinary vision, and it included removing the roof over the meeting room and replacing with a pyramid with skylights. And so that afforded a very large open space, very beautiful space for our quiet worship. So that move from Westminster to Scioto was in 1999. And that's a long time ago. And when we first got there, the community around that corner looked in need of some lifting up. If you remember on Charlotte Street, now there's Charlotte Square there, but there were empty lots everywhere. And our purpose and commitment to being in the city was strong. We wanted to help lift the downtown and help the community in that area. Well, those vacant lots in the blink of an eye were developed into very pricey condos, townhomes, and multi-story expensive rentals. And before we knew it, the community that we were hoping to uplift didn't need our help. So instead of work in the neighborhood per se, we did our good works in other areas. And that included area prisons, alternative to violence programs, hosting regional Quaker gatherings, using our community room to distribute food with the organization Food Not Bombs, partnering with Dupsy as co-host for the RAIN program, now known as Family Promise. So we would continue to do good work, but the focus on making a difference in the city of Rochester was really not happening, and we were aware of that. So about 5 years ago, we determined that if we were going to have an impact on the city of Rochester, we needed to work together with Black churches on the other side of the inner loop. And through personal connections, I reached out specifically to Pastor Franklin Ross at Peace Baptist Missionary Church on Oregon Street. Oregon is right off of Central, kind of kitty corner to the main post office there. So if you imagine that neighborhood. After explaining my reason for contacting him, he was very excited to hear from me, and he invited me to join him and David Carr out at RIT, where Pastor Ross was giving a presentation to a graduate level class of architecture students. And so we'd never met him, and we drove out to RIT and sat in on this presentation that he did. And we were so inspired by his talk to this group of graduate students whose mission for that semester, their assignment for that semester, was to visualize transforming the old spaghetti warehouse into transitional housing for people coming out of prison, people struggling with chronic homelessness. It was so inspiring to hear him. And they invited us to join a fledgling corporation of 5 different churches. And we said, yes, absolutely. This is what we've been looking for. In order to make a difference, this needs to be a collaborative effort. So we created a not-for-profit organization to develop housing in the Northeast Quadrant. And we've been members of the board for all that time. And I asked Jeff last night if he could summarize or, just quantitate how many meetings we've attended. It's over 200. We meet every every Monday at 5:30 at Peace Baptist, and we will show you the other congregations that are involved. But I can't say enough about what it's been like to work with a diverse group of people who are committed to the same mission. It's been really inspiring and wonderful. So in addition to Jeff and Dan, originally Mike Farrell was part of the board, and Dan has taken his place. So each church has 3 representatives, and the 3 of us here today represent the Quakers. And what's interesting is that we have worked very well together, and we are a diverse group of churches. So there are 2 Baptist churches, 1 Hebrew Israelite, and then the Quakers. We did have a Protestant church, a Hispanic Protestant church involved, but their leadership moved to Georgia. So we are now 4 instead of 5. So Jeff wanted to say a few comments, and then we'll start with our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, our community of Quakers has struggled to be diverse. We don't have very many people of color. And several years ago, we embarked in a project to, educate ourselves and become anti-racists. And I attended tons of workshops, and I was yearning to have something more in my life, like relationships with African Americans. So I decided to get involved in this organization, and being in community with these folks for several years has been great to have friendships that have ongoing. Let's go to the next slide. Dan, do you want to?
Okay. As we work out the technicalities. Yes. I'm Dan Bell. I've been on the board for a couple of years now. It was Mike Farrell wanted to step off and I felt called. That's about all I can say about it. I'm coming from a very different background from probably most of you because I grew up on a farm in central Indiana. With the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. But I grew up as a pastoral Quaker. Ask us sometime about that. And we had connections with Kenya in Africa. So I had a very different view of the world from those around me. So now I'm on the board of a development corporation, which is trying to look at affordable housing, transitional housing in the northeast quarter of Rochester, New York. The organization, as Sarah and Jeff mentioned, is an interesting group, particularly coming from where I came from. Here's a quote from the president of our organization, Pastor Franklin Ross of Peace Missionary Baptist Church. The coming together of the faith communities is what gives this project excitement. It is the spirit of unity that will make this project a reality. We have the right heart and right spirit and the desire to partner and share resources. We have a mission statement and a vision statement. Every corporation does. Mission: to develop affordable housing along with supportive services for Monroe County's population of veterans, homeless, chemically addicted, and formerly incarcerated men and women, to restore hope, empower individuals, and impact families and youth for a better quality of life. This is what we're trying to do. Our vision, at least at the moment, to develop state-of-the-art housing for men, women, and youth with on-site mental health support, medical referrals, transportation, education, mentoring, job training and employment, spiritual development and nurturing. This will be accomplished with the unique talents from a diverse blend of faith communities already anchored and committed to the neighborhood in collaboration with community partners.
Here is a view of the congregational centers for these organizations. 15th Tabernacle, Bethel, on Harrison Street, right across from the House of Mercy. And then Holy Trinity Missionary Baptist Church on North Street. There is the Quakers Notice these are the only three white folks on the board. And the Peace Missionary Baptist Church. The building with the mural is the one we've just left on Scioto Street across from the East End Garage. We have a development consultant, David Carr, who's been very active in the community. And our officers shown below. President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer. Recent accomplishments are for the city awarding the Central Ave property for our development partner, DePaul, for one of the two planned residential buildings. This is an accomplishment from 2022. The other two buildings on Portland and Hudson Avenue were added without the city requiring us to have an RFP. Also, the city, Rochester's zoning board unanimously approved rezoning of Central Ave. The Central Ave and Portland Ave locations will include supportive housing for 15 chronically homeless and 20 frail elderly. Other units will be in market rate pricing. The other area organizations such as CONEA, which has a master plan, we've been integrating with them. And we've had 5 meetings up till now with Family Promise, since they have so many goals similar to ours. This is a map of the locations of these 3 buildings. The big blue smiley face is where Doopsy is. And the Quakers, were just on the other side, inside the inner loop to the right of you. Here's a rendering from the architects of the Central Ave housing, 3 stories, 30 units. And a footprint. And Peace Baptist is right here, right next door. This has been an empty lot for many, many years. And some waste underground storage tanks have been removed for environmental reasons. And over to the far right, far to the left, is the post office on Central. And on Upland Portland, another residential 40 unit. And their footprint. And this is the substance abuse clinic, which is going to be run by FLACRA, Finger Lakes Association. I forget what they stand for, but they've been active more in the southern tier. These are some photos of us walking around the neighborhood. And recently, twice now, we've had a mini clean sweep to help improve the neighborhood, partnering with House of Mercy. Sarah?
And just, if I get to the page, then I can speak directly to the mic. I think that's clearer. So we are working on our 2023 annual report, and that's going to be coming out in February. So we're using our 2022 report today, so as not to preempt our new annual report. But in 2022, RID designed a logo. That took a long time to decide on a logo for T-shirts to identify our group at community events and in our printed communications. So that was fun. And we expect, I'm going to say 2024 to be very exciting. And we're crossing our fingers that the funding is going to come through from New York State and that construction would actually start. As you can probably tell from the dates and the information we've shared, this is a very long process. We did not know when we started this that it would be 5 years and we would still be waiting for a shovel in the ground. But I think what I've learned is that you just have to show up, do the work, patiently wait, cross your T, dot your I, wait for this paper to get formally accepted, do the 501c, create your mission. I mean, it just takes many years. And everybody who's been in the development community and doing this kind of work, they already knew that. We were novice. We did not know. But sort of like once you start, you're in it. You got to stay through and stick to it. So as I said, we meet on Mondays at 5:30 at Pete's Baptist, and we do it in a hybrid format. So board members who can't attend by Zoom. And that's worked out extremely well. So here's our happy group. We couldn't get along better. We just love each other. It's been a wonderful experience. I grew up on the Lower East Side, and I remember moving to Rochester with my family in 1967. And I flatly asked my father, "Where are all the other people?" I was in public school. I lived on Henry Street. Most of my friends were Chinese, Puerto Rican, and Black. I was the minority in my public school classroom. So we got to Rochester. It was shocking. So this feels like home to me. So in closing, our meetings are well attended. The members are dedicated to learning and growing as an organization. In 2024, we expect to identify our next project. We've got a couple very exciting ideas. We want to continue our collaborations with House of Mercy and refine our skills so we can move forward seeking funding on our own. Right now, what we're doing, we're partnering with a developer. At some point, we'd like to be the developer, but we're a little bird. We're learning. We have to learn how to fly. We're still in the nest. But we've got great partners. DePaul has been wonderful in terms of a development partner and in instructing us and coaching us. And I think it's important for me to say, it's like, why would a developer on $1 million project need our little group? Well, there's a good answer to that. It's because we represent community engagement. We represent a connection to the community. And there are certain fundings within New York State that are restricted to faith-based projects. So the faith-based initiative is extremely attractive to developers because they know that it might put that application a little higher in the pile if you've got this connection to the people who are working right there on the ground. So our current focus is providing supportive services we believe will enhance the quality of life for the residents of these buildings that we hope to see come up. Our work is guided by God. We are proud to be doing what needs to be done to improve the lives of Rochester's most vulnerable citizens. And at this point, we'll take some questions from the audience and hope we can answer them. Thank you very much for your attention. I think there was a question right there.
So I'm interested in the name True North. Where does that come from and what does it encompass?
Okay, it was not picked by us, but it's True North is coming out of the abolitionist movement. So the True North, the slaves were heading true north. So we're thrilled with the name. Then we were thinking of names because we were all asked to brainstorm, and then DePaul came to us with that, and we're like, okay, we're totally on board. No, and that won't take a minute.
So that's that's going to be kind of like the moniker for all of the different buildings and places that you'll have.
Yeah, for this particular project, the substance abuse clinic will likely not have that same name, but the two residential buildings will.
Sarah, you've all done so much work on this. It's congratulations, and the perseverance is remarkable. And I'm wondering if you have linked with other groups to help them move forward in this. I'm thinking, we heard from Reach, for instance, earlier. Do you have any connection with them?
Not with Reach, no. Our, in terms of outreach, in terms of in the community, I would say our primary focus has been House of Mercy. And in fact, we co-wrote a grant with them. It, part of the American Rescue Plan Act, but we weren't funded through that. And, but we try to stay abreast of what House of Mercy is doing, including they no longer have it, but they had a warehouse where they were doing clothing distribution. And we had Quaker volunteers who were, we made the Quakers aware of that need for volunteer assistance. And so we did have people who stepped up for that. So we like to, Jeff and I toured House of Mercy when they did their open house this fall, and I encourage anybody, if you haven't been inside since Dr. Tammy Butler has taken over leadership there, get yourself over there. It's really impressive. I think in the fall, they always have an open house, and we really enjoyed seeing the transformation inside. So they're doing really good work there. So Hinge Neighbors, we've attended some of their board meetings and tried to make them aware so that you're not working separately on the same thing and not overlapping at all. So Hinge Neighbors is working on what's going to happen when the other part of the inner loop is filled in, and what kind of development is going to happen. They're really pushing for single family homes to try and restore the neighborhood to what it was previously before the inner loop was built. So, and there are a couple other churches. So we're sort of expanding. We're expanding possibly on another project to include 2 other churches that have their own development corporations, so that we even strengthen more. And they're in 3 different parts of Rochester. Zion Hill off of Genesee, Helping Hand off of Joseph Avenue, and RIDC. So we're working on a project that would include a larger collaboration with more churches and more impact. And then, of course, we're continually talking with Kim Hunt-Uzlak at Family Promise. We know that I've always thought, like, if we're going to build a building, let's build a building for homeless families, because so I've attended and scheduled meetings between various Mike Patterson and Pastor Stevens. I mean, just meeting after meeting, trying to find out what does Family Promises need, where would they like to be located, how much capacity could they take on as an organization. And it's very exciting that something might happen. Because last time I talked to Kim 2 meetings ago, she was saying for every family that they accommodate, they turn away 50. 50 families are turned away who have need for housing. So that strikes, that just went right to my heart. Is heartbreaking. It's one thing, it's so much easier to house an individual, but to house a family is really difficult and so important, so vitally important right now. As a retired city school district teacher, I just can't even imagine, having a kindergarten student or a 1st grade student, that's the level that I taught, be homeless on top of everything else that they struggle with. So we're really very interested in pursuing options with Family Promise. But again, it'll be another 5 years, likely before anything happens. Takes a long time.
Thank you, Sarah and Jeff and Dan. I mean, this is really an incredible effort.
Thank you.
But my question is, I think I understood, maybe from your mom, that you had been looking at existing structures. And now it seems like you've moved towards building new structures.
Great question. Because at the beginning I said the architectural students at RIT, the graduate level, they have it was a special course on transforming, and there's probably a repurposing or some special word for that. So originally David Carr and Pastor Ross had their eyes on the spaghetti warehouse. How many people ever ate there? They know. Okay, so you know the building. It's enormous. It's numbers of stories tall and has a central courtyard that goes through the center of it. So it's within a stone's throw of Peace Baptist, so that they had that on their wish list. And so DePaul, so these graduate students did an incredible job. There were like 5 teams that took the structure of the spaghetti warehouse and re-envisioned it as transitional housing. So it wouldn't have been permanent rentals. It would have been short periods of rental until somebody was stabilized, and then move on to a more formal rental. Unfortunately, they could not get the building for the price that was affordable in the big scope of the plan. They offered, I think, $800,000, but the owner wanted over $1 million. So that opportunity fell through. So then, with conversations with the city of Rochester, they got out the maps of the vacant land around Peace Baptist, around Holy Trinity, and over on Portland. There were over 360 vacant lots available. And so sort of trying to target properties that were near the churches that wanted to invest in the work, and then negotiating with the city and having the properties held, having the properties rezoned, because the property next to Peace Baptist might have been light industrial or dual purpose, I forget what. So that had to be rezoned, and all of those applications and all of the conversations with the city were successful. And, so we ended up with 3 new builds instead of 1 repurposing of an older building. And, it's just a different way to accomplish the mission. I think what may have not been clear is the supportive services aspect of this. So I just want to touch on that. There are dollars from New York State called ESHI dollars, Empire State Supported Housing Initiative, ESHI, ESSHI. And so a developer like DePaul can apply to build a building, and they get currently it's about $25,000 a year per unit to offer services for the resident in that apartment. If you've not been to Upper Falls Square, they have not 75 units, I think. They're across the street, so I might be underestimating, but half of the units there offer supportive services for people with mental health diagnoses. So what we're looking at for the properties that we're talking about are a combination split equally between frail elderly and chronically homeless. DePaul would offer the supportive services for the frail elderly. That is something that's in their wheelhouse. And the services for the chronically homeless would be provided by Person-Centered Housing Options, which is a partner organization with DePaul run by Nick Coulter. I don't know if you know Person-Centered Housing Options, but they're doing amazing work. So you can see that the funding it's not just building a building, but there's funding also coming to support the residents, and a targeted type of resident. And, my mom is 96. Bless her heart, she's still alive. She's got very good care, but think of all of the frail elderly who are struggling with 3 steps into an older home, or a bedroom on the 2nd floor, or a bathroom on the 2nd floor, or who are desperately trying to live a dignified end of life scenario. And it is such a struggle. It's a struggle for them. It's a struggle for their caregivers and family. So to have state-of-the-art apartments that are designed for stability and balance and whatever, all the other services with 24-hour, security. I've toured over at Upper Falls Square many times. They've got, from your apartment, you can see a video of who's at the door to buzz them in, and they've got 24-hour, security on the 1st floor and checking things they have internet as part of it. They all have flat screen TVs. The design is gorgeous. The hallways are double wide for 2 wheelchairs to pass. The hallways are just outfitted with the most gorgeous photos of Rochester. They've got a fitness center. They've got an outdoor courtyard. They have over DePaul's building at Upper Falls Square. They have studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And at the time when I first looked at it, I think the studios were $695 a month. The 1 bedrooms were $795, and 2 bedrooms were $900 something. So those were the market rate. And then, they have the mental health supportive services option for residents too. So it's really tremendous work that's being done, and the dollars that are out there to support these various different populations really gives a credit to what New York State is doing in terms of these kinds of services. And we just need more of them. As I said, with the homeless family situation, we just need more housing, more affordable housing.
Sarah, this sounds wonderful. Your primary funding source is New York State. Are there other funding sources too? Is it all coming from the state?
Most of it's coming from the state. There are some federal programs too. And the city of Rochester is supporting us. Yeah.
Sarah, Marie Gibson is asking a question on chat.
Okay.
What do you know about the immigration crisis and how it is or will be affecting Rochester, or what is in place to address that?
I unfortunately am not well informed on that. I know there are initiatives here supporting Afghan refugees, but I don't know a whole lot more. We're really focused on the Rochester community. There's another.
Hi, my name is Reina Bufavong. I'm a member here at Downtown. I was wondering, is there like regulations or something that the residents or the people that are in these programs have to comply with to be able to benefit from, mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling? Just wondered about that.
Yeah, there are strict guidelines in terms of behavior, and when you're in this is what I know from Upper Falls and the mental health supportive services. So you're assigned a social worker, and the social worker is there to help. If you don't have the skills to maintain an apartment, they'll teach you and guide you, but you're also expected to keep your apartment clean and orderly. So there's a give and take. So there's you have to abide by these community rules within the facility in terms of noise and disturbance and cleanliness and behavior. So, other than that, I don't know the fine details, but I know that there are apartment inspections.
How do you envision people of your meeting and people of the partner churches being involved once the structures are up and going?
That's another great question. I didn't even think about that. So on top of trying to get the buildings built, we have 2 or 3 primary things that we'd like to see implemented. And one of them is a clothing boutique of used, high quality used clothing that the residents could look at and purchase or get for free. But the vision is to have it very high scale in appearance. If you ever shopped at the Blue Boutique by Goodwill across from Pittsford Plaza, it's no longer there anymore, but that is the vision, is that people who have needs would go into a used clothing outlet and feel that they were in one of the nicest stores in Rochester. So that is a vision that is coming out of Bethel Tabernacle Bethel, because their faith community already has clothing distribution. So that's one thing that they're pushing and striving for. Another thing is to have like a spiritual development 12-month, a course that you could take that would ground you in that area if you felt that your life was missing or lacking a spiritual connection. And that could be sort of like an AA course, but it would be for spiritual growth, not substance abuse. And so all of those things would take funding. So we're looking for we have to look for grants in order to provide those services. And the third thing that we're envisioning and have talked about is like a financial basic training for people who have not ever budgeted, who don't have a checking account, who aren't familiar with how mortgage or interest rates or credit cards or credit scores and things like that. So those are the 3 things: so clothing distribution, the spiritual growth, and the financial basic aid.
Thank you.
You may have already answered this, and I apologize for coming in late, but how are you getting the word out to people? I mean, I've learned so much just in the few minutes I've been here, and I want to believe that there are a lot of people in Rochester. I mean, people are moving back in, people with money, resources, and I think if they're moving back to Rochester, they care about what happens in Rochester. So I'm just curious, how else would I have found out about this if I had come in this morning?
Great. That'll put a little nugget in my brain for take to our next board meeting. It's very hard to get any traction on this when we haven't built a building. What kind of credibility do we have when all we've done is sit around a table and talk 200 meetings? Right? But I assure you that in 2024, if a shovel's in the ground, they're going to know about us. And, but even my son Henry works for the city of Rochester, and he thinks, oh yeah, Mom, right? All right. It's like, yeah, keep dreaming, Mom. Like, okay. But then I'll tell him, well, we did get $500,000 from the city. You did? So I think we're not quite credible yet. But we will be. You have to be patient in this game. So, but there are other projects that have been very successful that have been spearheaded by faith groups, like the Zion Hill over off of Genesee did a senior housing project. And it wasn't Pastor Stevens, but another project was done right off of Joseph Avenue. And I just, maybe more needs to be said about those projects, and make tours available. Instead of touring the grand homes of East Avenue, maybe we should have tours in the spring of the developmental projects that have been going on. Because when you go inside them, they are truly impressive. The architect that DePaul works with is SWBR. Their work is stunning, just stunning. And so I encourage, if you're interested, call up Upper Falls Square and I think you could just show, well, if you needed a guided tour, they would take you, you'd need to call and schedule that. But if you're curious about what these look like and the feeling that you would get as a resident, take a tour. It's really impressive. And I think what we're understanding is that what we're learning from the community is that many of the residents who are in substandard rental properties are so used to awful, so used to deplorable, so used to just horrendous landlords that they can't even envision that they could possibly live in something as beautiful as these facilities are. And that's wrong. That's just flat wrong. We have some connections with some former students of mine. So I've seen it all. I've seen just horrible apartments and inattentive landlords. And so what we need to do is, as part of the uplifting part, is making the community understand that they are worthy and that they deserve to live in as nice a facility as anyone else.
Who's next?
I just wanted to thank you for these wonderful examples of the results that are coming, but of working with this group of what were 5, but now 4 faith groups is a wonderful example. And then I'm impressed with how many different groups in the community or organizations in the community and I guess in government as well, that you've been involved with. And it's just a wonderful interconnection of all these things. And it's very impressive. And so I thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. I do have to say, our I would call them our fearless leaders, Pastor Ross and David Carr, are so inspirational. I mean, and David is the one, he was pictured as a development consultant, but he and Pastor Ross, they grew up in that neighborhood. They attended church in those neighborhoods. And they have been walking the streets and putting their heads together long before we ever came on board. So it's their vision, it's their community they want to heal. That area around Peace Baptist, it had traditionally been all single family homes in a vibrant neighborhood. It is, and then they all were torn down, and then it was empty lots, and it was, and then it turned into light industrial around the railroad track there. And so they really want to see that quadrant. That is their focus. They want to see that come back to what it was that they knew when they were young boys, young men. And so they've got a million ideas, and it's always so inspiring to hear them speak, because they're so excited, like it's going to happen tomorrow. And we're like, we jumped right on board, and it's like, well, it doesn't happen quite that fast. But we're committed. I'm committed. We'll stay on track. If they tell me there's another meeting minute to write and send out, I'll write it. So that's my role is communication. And I happen to like to write, so it's a really good fit for me. And I enjoy recording this evolution of this organization from the very start. And we've got it all on a Google, in the Google, captured in Google. So it's but if you met these guys, you would be inspired too. You can't help it. I mean, the first time I talked to Pastor Ross, before I'd even met him, I was like, I'm so on board with this. He's just a tremendously wonderful person.
Am I remembering correctly, and anymore, that doesn't happen very often, but that those enterprises that receive assistance from, and I'm thinking of new builds from taxpayers,
Mhm.
that a certain percentage of those new builds have to be available for low-income families at a lower price, a lower cost, a lower rent?
There's no have to be.
No.
There's no have to
Then I
be.
am wrong.
Yeah,
Well, there's a should.
there's an absolute should.
Oh, this is a real simple question. Are the apartments going to be furnished?
No, I actually, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, the supportive services maybe. But I have not heard that's true.
Sarah, does city council have anything to do with all of this?
Oh, yes.
And if so, who on city council is involved?
Mike Patterson is in that, represents that area. So we talk with him every 6 months and, or by phone even more frequently. So
How's
he's a strong supporter. And I arranged a meeting with Kim Honuzalak and Mike Patterson this fall. And he had not known of the work that she was doing. So that was really important to make that connection. And so he's really pushing that Family Promise be one of the next projects. You need somebody on city council to support what you're doing. Otherwise, you're pretty much going nowhere.
Sarah, one comment, I know Habitat for Humanity does financial things that you're envisioning maybe doing. They do that with new homeowners to get them just basic financial information.
Right.
But my other question was your move here to downsize, was it because of the environment? That you didn't want to, waste resources heating another building?
Absolutely. If you're not familiar with Scioto Street, that's a 400,000 square feet building. I mean, it's huge. We did, when we moved there, we moved because we had outgrown Westminster, but as all faith communities in the United States are not exactly booming and growing. So we were shrinking. And I've been involved with the finances for the Quakers since 2006. I could see the writing on the wall really, really clearly when you're looking at every contribution and number of members, et cetera, et cetera. So we started to shrink within our building first, making space available for rentals. We needed to increase our income. So when Eastman Community School of Music was doing their renovation on Gibbs Street, we rented rooms to the Eastman School. So that was wonderful. And then we took the front suite that had its own private entrance on Scioto, and Peyton Violins, Sam Peyton, rented that space. He is now over at Village Gate in the old city newspaper office, but we rented to him, so that helped with our income. And then City Blue, who we bought the building from, their building burned to the ground Christmas Eve 3 years ago. And we immediately opened our doors to them, and they set up business operations in our community room to get their feet on the ground after that tragedy. And immediately I started conversations with Mark Cleary. It's like, would you like to buy the building back? Because we bought it from him. So we rented to him to get established, and then negotiated the sale of the building to him, and then negotiated a rent back option for a year. So we had the entire second floor exclusively ours, and he had his City Blue operations in our community room downstairs. So that lasted a year, but we knew that even so, we needed a smaller space. And so we began looking for properties. I was on that committee too. And we searched for properties. We looked at many. We looked at over 200, either in person or online. There was nothing appropriate that had parking, that didn't need tremendous renovation. And then it just struck me that this is silly. We don't need to buy a building to be in it for 2 hours a week. This is crazy. So I said, we need to reach out to other congregations, and we talked to the Mennonites, and then I emailed Downtown Church and say, is there any possibility there's a room that you would have that we could worship in? And I said, we need this, this, and this. And they came back immediately and said, yes, yes, and yes. I'm like, okay. So the environmental impact of a building the size that it was, the human power required to maintain that building was awful. There was always something. And Mike Farrell, if you don't know him, he was like the 84 Scioto Street Buddha. He was just always there, calmly and patiently dealing with water leaks and roof leaks and heating and lighting and bathrooms and bird nests inside the bathroom vent. I mean, so there's a lot of that we're happy to put behind us, and we're thrilled to be here. And you've been so welcoming. And for me, it's kind of, right back home. And just on a final note, I just want to think of what my father is thinking in heaven as he understands what's going on here. My father was called to Rochester to do the coordination of the multi-churches that needed to downsize. So here I am doing it, and I end up here. So it's just very funny.
Is that the perfect segue? We are also struggling, and it was so inspiring to see your passions connecting with an incredible social need. It's our time. You need to get to worship. We need to get to worship. But just want to announce that we're going to be doing this book study in February, Beyond Resistance, through the forum. There are 5 copies of this thing that, and there are a couple copies. I think they've already been signed out from the library. It's Beyond Resistance: The Institutional Church Meets the Postmodern World. The phenomenon of so many churches shrinking. It's not just us, it's the world. But there is a crying need for spiritual awareness, if not a renewal. And this book is a starting place that we hope to. I think Nancy Brown will be speaking on February 11th, and Nancy Simpson, and I, and maybe Leah Cohn might also be speaking on, take a few chapters, and we'll be sending out more information. So hope to see many people there.
I ordered the book.
There are, these copies are for people to share as well. So
thank you very much.